Now, when we come to talk about rum from Panama, it's pretty safe to say that you will have heard of, even in like early stages of your rum journey, you're pretty safe you will have heard of Ron Abuelo. Pretty much Panama's biggest rum brand. We're going to talk about that distillery. But Panama has essentially 4 distilleries. We're only really going to talk about 2, but there is another company that we need to talk about as well called Pirsa. Now, doing the research on Panama rum, there are, from what we can gather, no rules and regulations really of what can go on. Again, before I've dropped this in the last few videos now. A lot of this knowledge now, and I mean a lot of this knowledge now, is coming from Matt Petrick's book, sort of Modern Caribbean Rum. Him and his wife did that carry. All been fact checked, 100% fact checked. Nothing has gone into that book, hasn't been fact checked. So, a lot of this knowledge is coming out there. Fantastic, fantastic book. So, no rules and regulations. And the bit I love about this, even a weighted average can be used. So even when that says 7 on there, 7 years, it does mean that there could potentially be a 5-year-old in there and maybe a 9-year-old in there. The weighted average, meaning the bulk of what's in that bottle, they can call it. So, if there's an unaged rum in there, say if there's like 10% unaged rum in there, 10%, I don't know, 8 or 9-year-old rum in there, but say 80% of it is 7-year-old, they can call it a 7-year-old rum, even though there is that sort of element of unaged rum is that in there. Now, I don't know the DNA of those rums. I'm not saying there is unaged rums in there, but that's essentially what a weighted average of age can mean. Whatever the bulk of the year that's gone into that, they can put that on the bottle. Now, as I said, Abuelo is pretty much Panama's biggest brand by a long, long way. The 2 distilleries we're going to talk about, I'm going to try and pronounce this, Hacienda San Isidro, and that's who makes Abuelo. The other distillery we're going to talk about is Las Cabras. Hopefully I've said that right. Las Cabras. And that is sort of owned by a company called SIR Alcohols. And we'll talk about them in a minute, because actually they do produce a hell of a lot of rum that you may have actually drunk without realising. So let's dive into Hacienda San Isidro. I'm terrible. I'm sorry. I'm terrible at sort of even Spanish, French. I'm terrible at English, to be fair. So I'm really sorry about pronunciations. But as I say, produce Abuelo, Panama's largest rum brand. Molasses and cane juice. They can produce 8 litres of rum. 8 million litres of rum a year, which, is still pretty damn good. If you can relate that to the drop works, the UK Scratch distillery that I kind of went to and put up a mini blog, probably at the time of this shoot, probably a couple of weeks now. We were saying they could produce 2 million bottles a year. And you think of the size of that. Now, these guys can still produce 8 million litres of rum. And don't forget, when we talk about Lewis at Dropworks, 2 million bottles, that would have already been, 2 billion litres is already kind of watered down, if you like. So the actual rum they're producing, 65, 70% ABV, gets watered down to produce those 2 million bottles. So actually it's a lot less. So when we're talking about 8 million litres, that'll be 8 million litres at what, 60, 70, 80% ABV. And then that gets diluted down. So it goes a lot further by the bottle. So, you can kind of gauge the size there. Even at 8 million litres, that's still a pretty damn big outfit. Now, they can also produce light and sort of medium bodied rum. They do say heavy, but, I think we can sort of agree that actually it's not really heavy bodied rums from Panama. But the lighter rums get distilled from cane juice, and the more sort of medium bodied rums get distilled from molasses. But they're open and honest about this. They use grade B molasses. So molasses, just a very deep dive on this, the higher the grade, the more sugar content and the more good stuff gets used in there. So when we see like high grade molasses, yes, B is still high grade molasses, but it's not the best of the best. Some distillers will argue that actually there's not much variance between grade A and grade B. Some will argue. It just depends your scientific brain of what you actually classify as better or not. But the simple fact is grade B molasses will be cheaper to produce than grade A molasses. So we've got a few little facts here about the stills and fermentation. So again, we've got 48 hours fermentation, so 2 days. The yeast they use is like, they call it a pineapple yeast, which I'm kind of intrigued by as well. I'd love to sort of find out a little bit more about that. They have got 2 4-column stills on site. All right. Now, this is how they make the 2 different types of rum. So or 3, if you want to say heavy-bodied rums as well. But essentially, what we're doing. So instead of using all 4 stills will be the lighter sort of run that comes up. So it go through boom, 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 boom. But to create the more medium and heavier bodied rums, they only use the first column, if you like. So that is their more sort of heavier rum. But you will agree that even while you can produce heavy rum off a column still, it's not going to be as heavy in that sense as what it would do off a pot still. Pot still will give you very different vibes to a column. Now, a couple more facts to give you. Aging must be done in ex-bourbon barrels, not must be done, basically what they call Hacienda. Hacienda do use ex-bourbon barrels to age the majority of your rums. You'll know, and there's a bit coming about this in a second, you know that they have got that sort of different cask finishes. The Napoleon would be cognac and stuff like that. But that we'll talk about that in a second. And they've got multiple aging warehouses, and they've got basically circa 110,000 barrels aging at any one time. Now, the bit I want to get into, when they create the higher sort of, or the more expensive Abuelos, so the 12-year-old and over, they do actually use a sort of blend of Solera aging in there as well. So they will have rums aging in their own right, much like we chatted about last week with Santa Teresa, where say half the bottle will be aged rum and the other half will be Solera. So how they create these kind of other variety, I forget what's the word I'm looking for. Other products coming out. I've got a total mental block when I do these videos. But the other sort of variants that they come out, you know, the barrel finishes and all that sort of different stuff, that will be produced or used with this sort of blend of Solera aging as well. So they'll have their rums aging in there, and then they'll kind of have a different sort of Solera system going on where they'll kind of top up and sort of, you know, basically blend those 2 different rums together, barrel aged and Solera aged, to create a different kind of extreme. So that is Hacienda, the producers of Abuelo. Now we can move on to Las Cabras, which are owned by SIR. I think this is how you would say it, SIR, S-E-R, SIR Alcohols. Now, these may or may not come out of that distillery. Again, I don't know. We do have a lot of Panama rum that actually has no official home, no kind of distillery. So not like, to equate that, not like El Dorado. El Dorado comes out of DDL. DDL is, El Dorado is DDL's brand, if you like. Much like Diplomatico is Deuce's brand. Much like Appleton is obviously Appleton, you know. Foursquare is, and Dawley's is Foursquare rum, you know. We don't have, these are just brands of rum. So rum that's been produced and then bottled up and given a brand name. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about coming up now with this distillery. So this is Las Cabras. They are continuous stills. They do use molasses and can produce 7.5 million litres of rum a year. So slightly less than Hacienda that produce Abuelo. Now, most of the rest of the rums, as I said, will come from, you know, Las Cabras, alcohols, if you like. Now, we can talk about a couple of brands here that we know for a fact have come off there. Granda Rum, so Grand ER if you're in the UK. And I think that's pretty much a worldwide brand, because I actually see more of the European contingent talk about that than I do the UK contingent, if you like. So I'm assuming that's out there in Europe, and I'm assuming it might be in the US as well. But Granda Rums, that definitely comes out of Las Cabras. I've saved the big ones till last. We've got Carne Brava, which is, again, I'm not even sure whether that's still a thing over here. I think it's still being produced on a US market, but I don't think it's being imported to the UK. I don't know. I haven't seen it for a while. So Carne Brava, that was pretty big in the grand scheme of things. Not massive, but pretty decent, you know, pretty well regarded 5, 6, 7 years ago in the UK. Just sort of died off and gone off the scene. Panama-Pacific is another brand that anyone goes to Rumfest and places like that, you would have seen Panama-Pacific, and you can get that very easily through Master Malt, through the Whiskey Exchange in the UK. Again, I don't know what that's like around the rest of the world, but a little bit more expensive, but they tend to do sort of higher aged rums that are 5, 7 and 9. It goes up to 20 3, I think it is, something like that. Really nice rums, actually, really nice. And again, it's that thing where, you know, I actually really like, even though I'm predominantly a lighter rum person, I really like the sort of 9-year-old version of that. It's actually, because they are lighter styles, it does work quite well. Now, the one I said I'll drop in here, because Las Cabras, it does produce a hell of a lot of rum for Bumbu. Bumbu XO to be precise. So Bumbu XO, pretty much most of that rum, from what I can gather, comes out of La Cabras, Panama. So it's a Panama rum. Now, just to get into the technical stuff that we kind of get in there, they basically have 2 different fermentations. They have a 24-hour ferment and they have a 48-hour ferment. And again, that will be able to produce the different sort of styles of rum, if you like. 2 column stills, copper and brass. So they've got brass parts of the stills as well. Again, aging is done in mainly ex-bourbon barrels, and they have 40,000 casks on site aging. But that will be predominantly because when you look at 7.5 million litres, that's predominantly because they are using, making a lot of rum, which is then sold off, which brings us nicely on to the company Pirsa, P-I-L-S-A. Now, the best way to describe Pirsa is kind of see it as another version of E&A Shear. For those of you that have been in rum world, kind of heard of E&A Shear over in Holland, and they've got the main rum company in Liverpool as well. Lots of aging, lots of sourcing. If you want to create your rum, you pretty much go to E&A Shear, because they've got multiple, you know, like huge amounts of stock. They buy up rum from all these distilleries. So Pirsa essentially is the Panama arm of that. Panama, in Panama, Pirsa work very, very closely with certain alcohols. They will be responsible for buying rum. They'll be responsible for aging rum. They'll be responsible for sourcing rum. So, for instance, if Dave from Brighton's phones up, you know, he's contacted Pirsa and says, "I'd love some Panama rum." They will get in contact with Pirsa. Pirsa will sort that for them. And from what I can gather, there's big links with Germany as well, because this is just one brand that I know of. Ron Artisano is obviously another one, you know, that's aged and blended in Germany. But obviously it's Panama rum. Rompiet is another one. Again, it's a Hamburg brand. Hamburg, Germany. Rompiet. They've got a 3 and a 10. It's lovely stuff, by the way. But again, all that will be largely sourced by Pirsa. So basically, to sum up Panama rum, if it isn't Abuelo, the chances are, on a global worldwide scale, the chances are it's come out of the other distillery, Las Cabras, and the chances are that it's kind of been sort of sourced by Pirsa, who have then sort of sold it off to different kind of bottlers, different blenders, different ages all around the world.